the like button. Make sure you sub to the channel if you're not a member. And also hit the notifications so that you're able to get all of my content as well as all of my videos, okay? I want to give a shout out to all of my subs, both my old subs, my day ones, and my new subs as well. And everybody that's been supporting the channel in general. I also want to give a shout out to the whole entire Lions Den basketball and boxing community. In this case, we are talking hoops. I also want to give a shout out to it's Behind the Bench Network. That's his channel name. Um, he inspired me to do this video because there was a topic in which he had brought up, and I kind of wanted to give my spill on it. So go check his channel out, man. It's a real dope channel. I also want to give a shout out to everybody that's up in here. Sugar, see you in here, sweetie. Brother Ron, see you in here, and Brother Ted, man, see you in here, okay? And with that being said, man, let's go ahead and get right to it, okay? And if you catch me in the middle of the video, go ahead and rewind this back. Now, what prompted me to do this video right here is there's this common misconception about both the Spurs and the Mavs, okay? And we're going to get serious. It's none of that old, you know, just off the top of the head BS. We're really going to dig in deep into everything so that you'll know and put into perspective as to why both the Mavericks and the Spurs were not super teams. Okay. Now, first and foremost, man, let me say this right off the top. Okay, both of these teams, especially when you talk about that 2011 team that included Dirk, Jason Terry and Jay Kidd and the rest of the crew, and also when you include all of the Spurs dynasty. From 99, 2003, 2007, and 2014. Those were all great teams, okay? Can't take anything away from them. However, they were not super teams, okay? They were not super teams. First and foremost, we have to understand what a super team is, okay, before we get a team is compiled of really good players and good role players. That doesn't make that team a super team, okay? A super team is more so a team in which you have a collective group of three players who are perennial all-stars, okay? They actually joined that team and they were Hall of Fame players, okay, and once probably led their team and had the potential to be, Hall of Famers or Hall of Famers at that time, or they're, they're basically a phenomenon. Okay. Now let me get right back. Let me get to it. All right. Now, um, when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks team, all right, we all know Dirk Nowitzki was that guy. Okay, Dirk Nowitzki, he averaged around 23 points per game. That was the highest scorer on the team. The next person that averaged the most was Jason Terry, which was at 15.8, and Caron Butler, which was at 15 points. Now let's break this down, right? In no way, shape, or form, this was a super team. Okay, Jason Kidd, okay, at that time, he was 37 years old. Okay, he was 37 years old of age, all right? And he was clearly beyond his prime. A prime Jason Kidd, okay? And at this time, beyond the prime Jason Kidd, okay, he only averaged 7.9 points, okay? 8.2, it was roughly 8.2 assists and 4.4 rebounds, okay? A prime Jason Kidd was way beyond that. Okay, um, at Jason Kidd's peak, and we're talking about a young Jason Kidd, he averaged around 16 to 18 points, averaged around nine rebounds, 9 to 10 rebounds, and around I'm talking about that around 9 to 10 assists and between 6 to 8 rebounds. Okay, that was Jason Kidd in his prime, and clearly he was beyond his prime. He was still a solid player and everything, but he wasn't the Jason Kidd of old. But nevertheless, he still contributed, and he still was able to help them uh, get a hump in that 2011 championship. And also, I want to say this going forward. The reason why I am bringing this up too is because a lot of LeBron fans seem to think that when about the 2014 Spurs, you talk about the 2011 team that defeated with the Mavericks. They seem to think that this was a super team, but it was not. Okay, clearly it wasn't. Then you also have Jason Terry. All right, Jason Terry was 33 years old. Okay, and while Jason Terry was a really good player, he never was a player that you could say that was a Hall of Famer or a perennial All Star or anything like that. At Jason Terry's peak, and at this time when they defeated LeBron and the Miami Heat in 2011, Jason Terry was 33 years old. Okay, and he only averaged 15.8, which was solid. But in his peak, he averaged around 19 points per game. Okay, Karan Butler, another one of my guys that I like watching. He was 30 at the time, and he only averaged about 15 points, which was still solid. But Karan Butler was not a Hall of Fame player. Okay, he wasn't a Hall of Fame player, and he had Hall of. Now I'm not going to say when Karan Butler came out of UConn. Okay, when he came out of UConn, I was saying to myself, okay, maybe he did have potential. You know what I'm saying, to be that guy, because at his peak he averaged around 18 to 20 points, between 18 to 20 points a game, but he only made one All Star. He was not a perennial All Star. Okay, so that pretty much closes the casting on him being a part of a super team, or him possibly being a Hall of Fame player in the mix with Dirk Nowitzki. Okay, then of course you had Tyson Chandler. Tyson Chandler was a great player. Yeah, Terry was a high level 15 to 20, but he wasn't a Hall of Famer, man. He was a good player, but he wasn't a Hall of Famer. We're talking about Hall of Famers and perennial All Stars. Okay, that's what's considered a super team. Pager was 36, in which I will get to Pager in just a second. And actually, at this time, it showed Pager being 33. Okay. Um, but Tyson Chandler was 28 years old at this time. While I like Tyson Chandler, okay, knock on Tyson Chandler, um, the knock on Tyson Chandler was the fact that he played 20 seasons, was a really great screen setter, but he wasn't a Hall of Famer and wasn't a perennial All Star. Okay, he never led the league in blocks. Okay, and out of the 20 seasons that he played, he only um, had double digits in rebounds only 5 times. Okay, if you're going to be a perennial All Star or somebody that's considered of Hall of Fame caliber, you have to at least have, I would say, anywhere from about 10 plus seasons in which you're putting up a double double. Okay, when you go look at Duncan, when you go look at Shaq, when you go look at guys like Wilt, when you look at Kareem, when you look at those great centers, then you'll be cooking with grease, so to speak. But in this case, it doesn't take anything away from Tyson Chandler. He was just a really great role player, and can't take anything away from what he brought to the table, because he was a good screen setter, good pick and roll player too as well. Uh, you said it was a super team. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a super team, man. Now, also you got Sean Marion. Okay. Now, Sean Marion, he had potential, Hall of Fame potential. Okay, and some people, there are some people that believe that Sean Marion could be in the Hall of Fame. Okay, when you talk about a role player, Sean Marion at his peak was averaging anywhere along the line. The highest that he averaged was around 21 points a game, and between 17 and 21, because you have to remember he really thrived in that 7 seconds or less offense when he was in Phoenix, and he averaged around. One thing I will give Sean Marion, for his size, he was a great rebounder because he averaged anywhere from about 8 to 11 rebounds, and he was a great shot blocker for his size, being 6'7" and 6'8". He was a four-time All-Star, and what also doesn't get talked about is the fact that he was All NBA third team twice. Okay, so, but I'll say it again. He was not a perennial All Star. If you're going to be a perennial All Star, you have to have more All Stars than that, and the All NBA. First team is a plus two as well. And unfortunately, he didn't get that. But it doesn't take anything away from the benefits that Sean Marion brought to the table. Peja Stojakovic, we know about Peja Stojakovic, and if you don't, he was a really key guy, especially when you talk about those Kings teams over there in Sacramento and everything, and could shoot the lights out, especially from that corner. But he had only averaged 8.6, and he was clearly a shell of himself. But it didn't take away because he did contribute. Okay, and other than that, you just had a bunch of solid players that were able to come off the bench. You had your J.J. Barrera, you had your Brendan Hayward, you had your Sasha Pavlovich, you had your Corey Brewer, you had guys like Deshaun Stevenson, and just to name a few. You also had like guys like Brian Cardinal and Bobois. I always can't really pronounce his name that well. Some of those guys didn't really get those many minutes, because of being in the postseason and being in the finals. You can only have a certain number of guys that you could play. But the thing about it is that wasn't a super team. Okay, it was just a collective group with one main guy in Dirk Nowitzki. I'm not going to say he single-handedly, killed everything, because Dirk could be inefficient, very inefficient at times and stuff, but it didn't take away from Dirk's greatness. Okay, so they just had, a bunch of really good players who were a little bit older, a little bit more experienced and everything, and knew how. You had guys that knew how to do the dirty work, and also this also gets talked about too. All right, they took advantage of the weakness of LeBron during that time, and we all know what happened. We don't need to go back to that, okay? But they were able to capitalize on that, and they were very smart veterans that were able to capitalize on the inefficiencies of the Miami Heat during that time. You said sharpshooters meant more from 2000 to 2012. Yeah, absolutely, 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 man. Now, another thing is, man, that we got to talk about. We got to talk about the Spurs. Okay, there's this common misconception too that the Spurs. I mean, all of the Spurs they say were super teams, but the one that people like to key on is the 2014 team, of course. You know what I'm saying, and they also key in on '07 because what do we know about that? Well, in '07, that's when they defeated the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron, and then in 2014 they defeated LeBron when he was with Miami. And they always like to say that these Spurs teams were um, super teams, but they weren't. Okay, but you have to realize in '99, okay, in '99, which was the lockout season, Tim Duncan had averaged 21.7. David Robinson was clearly not the same because of injuries. He had only averaged 15.8 points, and the next person that was able to average in double figures was Sean Elliott. Okay, and we all know what happened to Sean Elliott. We don't need to go through that. You know, if you don't know, just go look it up. You know, he unfortunately, you know, his career was kind of, I'm not going to say cut short, but he kind of was dealing with with the issue with the sickness that kind of it set him back a little bit. Okay, but nevertheless he still was able to put up double figures. However, that was not a super team. Okay, the only player that you had on there was the Twin Towers and David Robinson, and Tim Duncan was able to do his thing. We're talking about a young prime Tim Duncan who averaged a double double. Okay, then in 2003, okay, people got to realize, all right, the Spurs did it through a draft. Okay, who did they get first? They got Tim Duncan. Then after that, they went ahead. They got Tony Parker. They got a young Tony Parker. Okay, a young Tony Parker. All right, a young Tony Parker. I have to stress that again. Okay, Tony Parker coming over from France, and they had won in 2003. Now they did get Manu Ginobili also in 2002 or whatever, but Manu Ginobili, you know, he was kind of starting to get the feel of things, but he was a key piece in that 2003 championship. But again, this was done on the draft, and this was done organically. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Uh, Tony Parker was the was the leading scorer during that time. Okay, I think Tony Parker had averaged somewhere along the lines of like 16. You had Tim Duncan averaging, you know, his 20 and 10, and then David Robinson. What doesn't get talked about, a lot of people don't realize this. David Robinson was 37 years old during that time. David Robinson had only averaged, you know, like 5.8 points. David Robinson was clearly done. David Robinson was on that roster in 2003 when they won that championship. Okay, you said Tony Parker was a late round. Yeah, exactly. But the thing about it is and salute to you, Kareem, for coming up in here, man. The thing about it is everybody just talks. They constantly say super team, super team, super team. Again, they kept the same core of guys the whole time. They didn't go build a super team like a Boston who got. Even though it was free, you know, a thing with free agency and everybody going where they wanted to. When they talk about a Boston who got Ray Allen, KG, and or Paul Pierce already being there, or when you talk about the similar thing in Miami, all of those guys, they led their teams on their own. Chris Bosh was on his verge of being a Hall of Famer, as you know, with the Toronto Raptors. LeBron from Cleveland, and then of course D Wade had already won a championship in '06. None of this took place with the San Antonio Spurs, so you can't identify that as a super team. In '05, okay, you had um, you had Tim Duncan averaging 20. He had his 20 and 10. Manu Ginobili, he started to emerge even more, averaging 16, and then Tony Parker was at 16.6. Okay, then okay, this is something that doesn't get talked about. The MVP in the '07 finals, the finals MVP, it was Tony Parker, because Tony Parker clearly outplayed everybody. Although he averaged 18.6, it was Tim Duncan that led in scoring, but it was Tony Parker's impact on that series. And then you have Manu Ginobili at 16.5, the same trio. Okay, coupled with you know, a really good role player to come off the bench. Also, then in 2014, everybody wants to talk about Kawhi, him winning that Finals MVP and everything, but Kawhi hadn't quite emerged yet. Yeah, he arrived a little bit, but he wasn't seen as that all around player yet. He got that MVP for being a really good defensive clamper. That's why he got his name, you know, the Claw. But he had only averaged like 12.8 points. Then you had a guy in Bellinelli who nobody talks about. They don't talk about Bellinelli, but he was a dope shot maker. He averaged 11.4. You had Tim Duncan that averaged 15.1 points. Okay, 15.1 points. That's an older Tim Duncan, and I think for the first or second time in his career, he had averaged under 10 rebounds. And then you had a Tony Parker that averaged 16.7 points, which those guys were older. Okay. So when you talk about a super team, you're talking about guys that were perennial all-stars, that were Hall of Famers, and that all led their team to a certain extent. Okay, we can't you can't classify a team that was built organically like the Spurs, and you can't classify the Dallas Mavericks as a super team when you have the majority of those guys past their primes, or they were never seen as perennial all stars or Hall of Fame players. You said Ray Allen on the signings what they got, yeah. Yeah, the Spurs did it through they did it through great drafting. I can agree with you on that one. They did, you know, but that's the common misconception, is that the Spurs. Oh yeah, they were a super team. That I can't stand that. That to me, that's one of the most dumbest talking points that anybody could say. That the Spurs were a super team. If you want to identify, okay, look, I'll put it to you like this, right? If you want to identify the Spurs as a super team in terms of, okay, yeah, they were a really great team that was very constructed together, then okay, I can agree with you on that. But I don't want to hear this notion that, oh, they were a super team compiled with a bunch of perennial all stars and Hall of Famers, because if that's the case, Tony Parker would be top 75, right? Wouldn't he? You understand what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, and the same thing goes for Manu Ginobili too as well. And they didn't see those guys. They were really, don't get me wrong, they were dope players. They were impactful players and everything, but the guy that gets looked at the most is Tim Duncan out of that crew. But like I said, they had a whole bunch of different players and a supporting cast that was able to carry them too as well, and they just were not a super team. So hey, look, man, I appreciate everybody pulling up. I just wanted to put that notion to rest. That the 2011 Mavericks team was a super team, and as well as the 20, all of the Spurs teams out of those five championships that the Spurs had were super teams, because and especially that 2014, and one could argue the 2007 team too as well. I just wanted to put that to rest, but hope y'all enjoyed the video. Make sure y'all like the video, share it, subscribe, hit them notifications too. Till then, it's straight to the point, sports and entertainment. I'll get at you later.